The only businesses that really thrive are those that realize we have to get our people to perform predictably and consistently. Otherwise, we really don't have a business. We have a bunch of people running around doing their, changing the muffler one way and not having any consistency and predictability if you look at an automotive business. So really, the operating system allows you then to predictably and consistently deliver on your promise and develop a promise, develop a vision. Many businesses fail to even get to the point where they create a vision. And so they're operating from no system at all. The people don't know what they should be doing or what to follow. And so that just leads to confusion and chaos and why more businesses fail, because there is no system to deliver the promise of what their customers want.
And now, it's time once again for the show that gives glorious voice to 25 million business owners across the fruited plain. Radio Free Enterprise with Frank Fahncke.
Thank you, Dude Walker. Yes, indeed, I am Frank Fahncke. Welcome back to Radio Free Enterprise. Today, I bring you two guests. Marty Fahncke, who's a mergers and acquisitions expert with Westbound Road in Olathe, Kansas, and Doug Wick, a strategic business consultant with Positioning Systems in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Gentlemen, welcome to Radio Free Enterprise.
Thank you, Frank.
Glad to be here.
We have an unusual show for you guys today. Regular viewers and listeners will know that Marty Fahncke is a frequent flyer here on the show. And he's also co-author with me of our upcoming book, Boomer Sells the Business. And it's through Marty's good offices that we have Doug here with us today. Marty invited Doug to join us to talk about what's called a business operating system. What a business operating system is and why it's so powerful. And Marty, I know you include writing an operating system as one of your 7 steps to sale-ready condition for any business owner that's looking to sell their business. But my understanding is that you were not always such a big fan of the idea of business operating systems. And in fact, Doug was the person who got your thinking turned around on that. So if you would, let's start with why you weren't a fan and what happened that caused you to turn around on the idea and then invite Doug to be with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to do that. Yeah. So thanks for that introduction. So in my 30-year career, I've had a lot of great successes and a few failures, but mostly successes, which have been primarily kind of running businesses by the seat of my pants. And I always figured it's working well. Why change anything? Well over a decade ago, though, I was working with somebody at a business, and the CEO said, I want you to read these books by Vern Harnish and about the Rockefeller habits. And okay, I'll check it out. And so next thing I know, we've decided as a company that we're going to employ this kind of Rockefeller habits operating system, which involves like these very intensely structured meetings, and we're going to go to, we're going to travel once a quarter to do these things. The structure was just, I've never been a big structure guy. And so we started doing these quarterly meetings with Doug, who was hired to help the company go through this process effectively. And I don't know if I was your biggest pain in the butt client you've ever had, Doug, but I know I was. I got to be top 5. I got to believe I was top 5. I just resisted so much of the structure, and the way it all kind of works didn't make sense to me, and I caused a lot of problems. But over time, I started to see the benefits, and I started to see the results, and I was like, oh, now I understand this. And I eventually, in my acquisitions career, started working with hundreds and hundreds of different business owners who were preparing or hoping to sell their businesses. And one of the things that I realized was that businesses that had a written, documented, and structured game plan, whether that be through Rockefeller Habits or EOS or any other operating system that's out there, are much better run businesses. The owners are making much happier. They're making more money, and they're a much more sellable business. And so having an operating system became one of the keys to effectively selling a business that, that I've been talking about for many years. And now we're including in the Boomer Sells the Business book. And so I'm a believer. I fully understand now that why it's so important and how critical it can be. And so we were talking about, who should we bring in to talk about these types of things. And I've since come to know many, many consultants who do all sorts of different, everything from strategic coach to EOS and everything else. But I thought, the person I need to bring in is Doug Wick, because after what I put him through in those early years, he deserves to be the guy that gets to tell his story about the whys and whats of having written strategic plans and written operating system for your business. And so that's why I brought him in. So Doug, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your wisdom with everybody. And hopefully the audience is much nicer to you than I was back in those earlier days.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. Now that I remember, I recall you being a little skeptical. It's been a while. It's been a while, but yes, yeah. You're bringing back some good memories.
Well, and even back then we were betting on football. I think the Chiefs won something, and you lost a bet and had to wear a. Are you Green Bay?
I think it was the Vikings with Joe.
Vikings.
Yeah. I had to wear a Favre uniform, Viking Favre uniform.
That sounds painful.
It was very painful. Yeah.
Well, Doug, the prodigal son returns. Marty has reached out, and I really appreciate you joining us today. And I'm looking forward. One of the things I love about doing these interviews is I get to ask the questions I want to know the answers to. So it really helps me learn a lot. Let's start from the beginning with your definition of what a business operating system is, and why would we want one? What makes it so great?
Yeah, the value, and one of the reasons I think Marty, because he was in the creative area, we tend to think of creativity as being something that's less structured. And so what people don't realize is the power of discipline and structure in helping people be creative. And so I think that's why most people battle against it. But in reality, without that structure, you fall prone to having very little consistency, very little predictability, and very little accountability as well in your business. And so the value of an operating system provides a meeting structure, a structure for how the operating procedures in your business should run. The first coaching I did was with a gentleman by the name of Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth Revisited, and why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. And the whole intention of that was that most business owners who start a business really are nothing more than small business people who think that, mechanic who thinks because he knows mechanics, he can operate a business. And what happens is they end up working in the business. And so the only businesses that really thrive are those that realize we have to get our people to perform predictably and consistently. Otherwise, we really don't have a business. We have a bunch of people running around doing their, changing the muffler one way and not having any consistency and predictability if you look at an automotive business. So really, the operating system allows you then to predictably and consistently deliver on your promise and develop a promise, develop a vision. Many businesses fail to even get to the point where they create a vision. And so they're operating from no system at all. The people don't know what they should be doing or what to follow. And so that just leads to confusion and chaos, and why more businesses fail, because there is no system to deliver the promise of what their customers want.
That's an excellent definition and explanation of the value of it. So, if I could, what you're saying the value of this would apply whether someone were choosing to position their business for sale or if they just wanted it to be able to grow and to allow them to remove themselves as much as possible from the day-to-day operation. Is that a fair statement?
That is, I think, I've worked with a number of customers recently that they don't even have a vision. And without a vision for the business, you don't even know when things are, you don't know when things are going right, and you don't know when things are going wrong. And it's almost unfathomable to me to think that somebody wouldn't think of that. But I think I can remember the very first sales management job I had. I became a sales manager after being a salesperson, and I think the very first year I didn't have any structure at all. I kind of went, these people know what they're doing; they can do it on their own. And what I almost got fired. My general manager sat down and said, "Doug, you're too good to fail here. Either you got to improve, and so I got a mentor. I developed a system on how to get them to create their goals, create their own system for how they were going to get there. And then it was simply a matter of on a weekly basis, sitting down with them and saying, okay, are you doing these things? And most of the time they weren't, and they needed to be reminded. And when they got back on track and were following the activities, the system they had set up to achieve their goals, lo and behold, they'd stay on track and succeed. And so it's that same idea. You got to have a vision. You got to have systems and activities that you follow rigorously with discipline, and that allows you to stay on track and for yourself deliver on the goals by attending to the activities and therefore satisfy your customers, which ultimately the only reason to be in business is to satisfy your customers. And when you do it consistently, they reward you.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yes.
You talked about moving from salesperson to sales manager. Those are two entirely different jobs. Obviously,
Yeah.
You found that out. And it's similar to what you talked about, the auto mechanic who wants to open his own shop, or from my background, the printing press operator who wanted to open his own print shop. It's a completely different job. And I love Gerber's book, and I love that subtitle, What's Wrong with Every Business and How to Fix It. But I guess what I'm driving at is, do sometimes people come to the realization that maybe they want to go back to being a mechanic instead of running an auto shop? Do you ever run into that?
I have, a number of times. We had a value guarantee with all of my coaching. I've had a value guarantee. If you're not satisfied in one case, it was 3 meetings, and now it's usually within 3 months. I will, I will give them back their entire investment if they feel that,
Wow.
or whatever they feel it was worth at that point. And I can recall a couple of customers. One was a restaurant owner whose wife was the cook, and she decided to divorce him. So he said, "I'm gonna." Yeah, that was a difficult. And another one who simply told me he ran a school supply, and he said, "You know what? This is too much work. I don't want to do it. I'll just run my business the way it was, and I'm going to get out of it." Because it was to him too much of an investment of his time compared to the way he had been doing it. So those were the 2 cases I can recall where I had to give back the investment that they had provided. And usually it was very shortly after I got started, like 1 or 2 meetings in. So.
Now, what types, or let me put it a different way, is an operating system more effective or make better sense for certain vertical industries and or businesses of a certain size?
Well, if the only size that I can think of that it wouldn't make sense for is, and even then I think it would make sense, just one person, right? You know how to do it, so But if the minute you start hiring one person or 2 people or 3 people, the complexity of your business more than doubles with each person you you had. And so somehow, if you want to run a consistent, predictable business, you need to have documented systems so that people follow that procedure, because otherwise they're going to fumble around. If you've been doing something a certain way and it's been successful, then why would you not want the next person to do it as well that way? And then the documentation also allows you the opportunity to go, well, it isn't working. Let's look at it and evaluate it, and maybe we can tweak this, maybe we can tweak that, and you can make those adjustments. And actually, what you should be doing then is measuring the outcomes, of course, as well, to determine, did that tweak help or not? And that's something too frequently that businesses don't want to take the time to do. And in doing so, they fail to learn and fail to grow. And in many cases, that's why businesses fail.
So, Doug, you coach the scaling up system, also known as Gazelles, and it contains 4 components or 4 decisions: people decisions, strategy decisions, execution decisions, and cash decisions. Now, let's start with the people decisions. I love this. Getting the right people in the right seats, doing the right things right is the first order of business. Let me read that again. Getting the right people in the right seats, doing the right things right is the first order of business. So that seems pretty self-explanatory, but what does that really mean if you could give us like a sample business?
When I introduce those 4 decisions, I usually share with my customers, what's the outcome of getting people, strategy, and execution and cash right? And I define people by a harmonious culture of accountability. In essence, that helps people understand. And in fact, when I go through all 4 of them and give the definitions, we usually arrive at one of those 4 that is giving them the most pain. It's like the rock in their shoe that constantly is aggravating them. So in the case of people, a harmonious culture of accountability tells you, are your people getting along, and are they accountable? Are they getting things done? And in order to achieve that, and if you're not achieving that, we have tools and resources to help you do that. First of all, it starts with hiring, and we provide resources to help them use the top grading methodology, which is what GE used to hire A players at their when Jack Welch was there. And it's a very thorough process that helps people identify, what are the job accountabilities, what are the metrics that they should have, what is the cultural makeup. In other words, you've got core values. You should be interviewing to make sure that the people you're hiring have the same values that your business has. And so all that is incorporated. It's a long interview process. And then there's elements of that as well that we go through in the performance appraisals and so forth that use that same scorecard that we hired the person for to help with the evaluation process. I'm not a big believer in having evaluations on an annual basis. I think people should be evaluated every week if possible, and certainly no less than monthly. And it should be based on a objective and subjective criteria. The objective being, these are the metrics, the accountabilities you have, and the subjective being the ones that are the core values of a business. So that's in essence the people part of the business, and how to achieve that harmonious culture of accountability.
That is wonderful stuff. I learned a lot from you right there, Doug. I produced a number of years ago an online course called How to Hire and Keep Great People. And I'm hoping to get that also turned into a book at some point in the future. But the idea of doing evaluations that frequently, it makes a lot of sense, but I could see where a lot of managers and owners would shy away from that. I'm sorry, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on that. And in fact, so many things that you said, we could spend an hour on each point. But unfortunately, we can't do that. So the next group of decisions are strategy decisions. And from the research that I did, I found that Gazelles has something called 7 strata of strategy. Now, we don't have time to delve down into all those strata, but can you give us just sort of an overview of what areas of strategy you develop as part of the creation of this operating system?
Yeah, strategy, going back to the idea of what's the outcome. Strategy is the outcome of getting strategy right is top line revenue growth. And really what we mean by that is you should be growing faster than your industry, probably about 10 times faster if you have the
Wow.
correct strategy. And so, not 10 times, 10% faster. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me there. And there's a number of pieces in that. What Vern found in that, to briefly talk about the 7 strata of strategy during 2008 to 2010, when the country was going through a recession, he looked through the businesses that were doing well at that time, despite the recession. And what he found was that those businesses that were doing well had these 7 elements included. They had a distinction in terms of a differentiating extinction. They had a one phrase strategy. They had a brand promise and several other things. And so one of the other tools that I use is from Metronomics that is very closely related to scaling up. And there's a key attribution framework, very similar to how IKEA and Southwest Airlines determined where are we going to be. What you have to do is identify how are we different, and then plan for the next 3 years. How are we going to exploit those differences and really then project that over the next, what it would be, 12 quarters? How are we going to take this advantage that we've identified? We usually try and identify 3 to 5 different attributes that you have a distinct advantage over your competitor, and then expand upon them. So within 3 years, you have an idea. This is where we want to be in 3 years, which helps that gap increase and therefore increase the value customers perceive you at. That's part of the idea of top line revenue growth and how you can build yourself. Another one is an X factor, which is having a 10 time advantage, which is difficult to do, but most companies don't even start looking at that. I had a car wash that was able to actually determine. I can remember him struggling. This is a long time ago, before I think car washes realized the value of the car wash memberships. And he was in a workshop where he was thinking about getting rid of, because he said, well, these people have credit cards, and every month I don't have anybody to call them, and a lot of them are having problems with their credit card, that they've been defrauded or whatever, and so we just don't even. We're thinking about canceling it. And when he went through and looked at the value of those customers who were membership customers, paying him, a membership fee, whether the car wash was open or not, and they would pay him at the front part of the month, every month, he recognized those customers were 10 times more valuable
Wow.
than his regular customers. That was back in like 2009 or 2010. And I think you see, if you go to a car wash now, they're almost all trying to get you to be a member. And what he did was he revamped his whole business. He says, Doug, I'm not in the car wash business. I'm in the membership business. And he focused on customer satisfaction. And he told me when I talked to him this about 2 months ago, he said, I have $1 million in revenue coming in every month just on my membership.
Wow.
Yeah. He's got 9 car washes out in the San Francisco Bay Area. So he's doing very well.
God bless him. That's amazing. So it sounds
I have
like
to chime in here really quick.
Sure.
Because it's incredible that you're talking about car washes, Doug, because I actually use those as a case study for a whole different reason, which is a regular service-based car wash valuation multiple of a business is probably going to be around 3 times, maybe 3.5 times its profit in value. So if it's doing $12 million a year and it's profiting, let's say $2 million a year, the owner could sell that for probably $6 million. But here's what's interesting is by turning that into a membership business, that same $12 million a year doing $2 million a year profit is worth somewhere between 7 and 9 times its profit.
Wow.
So that business could be sold for between 14 and $18 million, the exact same business. So there's a whole other reason to do that. So I didn't know you were going to talk about a recurring revenue model case study, Doug, but oh my gosh, it's so huge if you're a business that can do that. And by the way, any business could do it. People don't think about it, but any business could do it with a little creativity. All right, sorry, I'm going to jump back out, but there's a massive difference in those two business valuations for the exact same business.
Yeah, we have in the strategy element of our scaling up work, we have a specific slide deck that we look at the different models of recurring revenue to help our customers build that and actually locate or identify an opportunity with recurring revenue. So
phenomenal.
Good point.
That's amazing. So, and thank you so much for joining in with that, Marty, because that's what it's all about, is the value that you're building, the asset that you're building over time. And what a difference in terms of leverage when really the nuts and bolts of the business changed very little. What I was going to ask you, Doug, it sounds like everything under those 7 strata, it relates to marketing. Is that correct?
Pretty close, although, as an example, identifying your X factor is not necessarily a marketing function as much as it's a financial function and being aware of how your business operates. But they are, a lot of them are very related to marketing. Yes. Yep.
Okay. I'm always trying to make sure I understand what we're talking about here. Okay, the next set of decisions revolve around execution. So what is it you're referring to in that group of decisions?
Execution, again, the outcome or the result of getting execution right is what I'd call profit or efficiency. And profit is the best measure of whether or not your business is being efficient. And so what we need to do there, a lot of this is systems related, but very much so it's involved in the meeting rhythms. We call it a cadence of accountability, where you have meeting rhythms, daily huddles, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, annual meetings. Then you have a dashboard that monitors the goals for the year and for the quarter. And most importantly, once you break down the year, then you divide it into 4 quarters with the idea of we're going to focus on this one thing with some associated priorities as well. But usually every quarter has a one thing focus, and the rest of the objectives or priorities, I think I use that term loosely, are hinged on making that one priority so that you're moving the needle, so to speak, on the business, improving and performing better. And so, again, a lot of times what we do at the very beginning is decide which of those 4 decisions are the most critical. And that's then what we decide, okay, we're going to focus on people, and hiring the right people. And so then we break down into themes and quarterly priorities each of the quarters, so that we're focusing on an aspect of probably hiring people, motivating people, coaching people, and so forth as we go through the year. So,
one thing that occurs to me is that I use the expression sometimes when trying to coach somebody who's thinking about becoming a business owner, an aspirational entrepreneur, shall we say. And as I use the expression, it's serious business. And the reason I bring it up here is, as I'm listening to you, a business owner who would implement this type of stuff is serious about their business. They're not playing around. They're serious about execution. And so it's something, again, like you mentioned, those two people who decided they didn't want to be in business anymore. It's not for everyone, is it?
No, it isn't. I find, unfortunately that some of the, I have one client who's been back and forth as a customer, and his biggest problem is he I think he likes the drama of being interrupted constantly, and so he can't get into routine. When I've been coaching with him, it's been frustrating, and I've finally decided I can't work with you unless you're going to dedicate the time and get him providing 1 hour or an hour and a half for us to meet, and then for him to set those times up to have his team, his leadership team, meet. It's just something he just, it doesn't work for him because he likes to be either a free spirit or not be governed by that kind of regimen and that kind of routine.
Well, Doug, I've seen something in business owners where it's almost an ego or a self confidence thing. It's like if everybody doesn't have to come to them for everything, then they feel like they're not important. And of course, we know how successful a business is, where the owner has to decide every decision. It's usually not. But I've
I
seen.
don't think they don't get it that's not, when if everybody's coming to you, that's not a business, that's
Right.
chaos,
Right, but they think that if I'm not needed, then I've lost my value and self importance, and so I think I see business owners who almost self sabotage success for that desire to be needed, everything to go through them every day.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because this guy goes, "I'm a smart guy. Why am I?" And I'm trying to tell him, but it's just like it just hasn't clicked with him that he needs to let go, and he needs to hire people to take care of the things that he's
Right.
being bombarded with constantly.
Yeah.
But
I worked for a guy one time who was the CEO of a $400 million privately held business. And he always showed up for every meeting on time. And any time, whether it's a client or you name it, I've got somebody telling me they're too busy, to show up or even call and let you know they're not going to make it. I think about that guy and think, yeah, but nobody was more busy than that guy. So the final group of decisions revolve around cash. There's a whole list of them here. One that I thought was great. I love the expression I'd not heard before. Harvesting the profits and distributing them as dividends. I really like that expression. So in addition to that, what sort of cash decisions will we codify in our operating system?
So, cash is really, again, going back to the idea of what's the outcome of getting cash right, that decision right. And the cash decision is about oxygen and options. I like to tell my customers that when newborn is brought into the world, love is like oxygen to a baby. All right. Well, to a business, oxygen is cash. You can't operate your business unless you have cash. And I think too many business owners don't realize how valuable cash is to the growth of the business. If you don't have cash, you can't keep funneling the growth of your business. I learned that very early on in my career when I was in radio. We set out one year, the very first year, to I think do $500,000 in business, but you have to put up a radio tower. You have to put up a building. You have to hire, like 10 different people. Well, all that sucks cash, and growth sucks cash. So you have to figure out, how are you going to cash flow this business? What kind of funding do you need up front? And most importantly, how do you get your customers to fund your growth? Marty knows this more than anything. The cash part of the business is really what determines the value of your business. And so when you have cash, you have options. You have options to, my other, that customer I was talking about, they literally buy every one of their competitors because they have a lot of cash, and that's been working, but I don't know how long it's going to continue to work for. So if you have cash in the bank, it increases the value of your business. And so what we try and teach our people with, we have something called the cash flow story, which is a software that an Australian company has put together that looks at a business and helps them decide. There's 7 levers that either lead to greater profit or cash or both. And a lot of times what people don't realize is that just raising your price can have a significant effect on your cash and your profit, but significantly on your cash flow. And most owners are really reluctant to do that and don't evaluate the business that they have and recognize that some customers are losing money on or making such a margin, a paper thin margin. They'd be better off not having those customers. And so that gets into the marketing aspect of that too, which is identifying who are your best customers, who are your ideal customers, who buy you for a profit and reward you with loyalty as well. So there's a lot to the cash flow process, but understanding that is so important, particularly for selling a business, but for growing a business, because if you don't have the cash funds, you're constantly going to the bank, and they're going to quit giving you money at some point if you still don't start, showing a profit. So
I've got a comment. So one of the businesses that I own, we just had this conversation, Doug, because of the processes you're talking about. And so I was working with my business partner on it, and that's not this one that we're talking about, but it's a different one. And there was an employee, and he was like, "Well, I'd kind of like, I'd kind of like to get rid of this employee, but if I lose this employee, they've kind of got these dedicated clients that they're working with, and I'd lose these clients." And I did some math, and I said, "Well, guess what? You're losing money. The amount that you're paying this really overpaid employee is actually more than the profit margin of the clients that you'd lose if you lost that employee." So it fits exactly what you just said. But without doing that cash analysis, that never would have come to light. It was just like, oh, I don't want to lose these clients, so I can't get rid of this employee. And so we were able to make the right decision about a plan to do that. And part of that actually was raising prices, because I submit, here we are in late 2024, that there has never been an easier time for a business to raise prices, and every business should be looking at where their prices are, because we're all getting hit with, everything's more, right? Gas, bread, everything else. But even on professional services, there's not a piece of software that I subscribe to that hasn't had a price increase in the last 90 days.
Right.
There's not anything that I do that people have well, sorry, we're having to raise our rates. Guess what? We're almost getting immune to it, unfortunately. But fortunately for a business owner is, right now you can raise prices and people are like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, costs more, I got to pay more salary, everything else. So that's fine. I expect a 10% increase or 15% increase. And there's almost no resistance. A lot of business owners are like, oh my gosh, if I raise my prices, all my clients will flee. They won't. Maybe you lose one, you'll more than make up for it by raising your prices. So your advice to raise prices, Doug, now's the time to do it.
yeah, in fact, if you don't lose customers when you raise your prices, maybe something else is wrong. There's a video and it's from Greg Crabtree. There's a great book he has called Simple Numbers, and there's a way to go in and look at your financials and determine what each of your employees is actually producing, so you can get a number on them. We used one of my clients. We used his formulas when they were looking to hire a salesperson to figure out how much is this person going to need to produce if we pay them $125,000, and that kind of value, when you can determine before you even hire the person what they're going to produce, what they need to produce, helps you make decisions as you move forward. And if they're not doing it in 6 months or 9 months, maybe you need to reevaluate that hire and so forth. But there are so many ways that you can look at your employees' numbers, your customer numbers, to evaluate them to determine, are they as profitable as you think they are? What value are they bringing? And maybe you even need to restructure your business to focus on a different customer because that's where you're making the money and you're not putting enough resources to it versus putting resources to something that you're losing money on or making very little. So those are the types of things we do and help within the cash area, Frank and Marty.
That's great stuff, gentlemen. Every business could benefit from listening to what you two just had to say. I have a thing I encourage my clients to do sometimes, which is fire the customer. And it's for that very reason. You're either not making enough or for the amount of hassle they bring, or you're actually losing money. But, the old joke is making it up on volume. So,
Yeah.
Well, we are running short of time here. I wanted to, I figured many people are watching and listening are thinking, okay, I get it. I want the benefits that come from having an operating system, structured ways of doing things, being able to exit myself from the business, being able to maximize the value of my business for sale and so forth. How do I get started, Doug? Where do I get started either outlining or writing my operating system?
Yeah, there's any number of ways. The traction, EOS, scaling up. I naturally prefer scaling up. Metronomics, 3-HAG Way is another example, which follows very closely the same formulas, a lot of the same formulas that scaling up does. You could argue, you could even go to the E-Myth Revisited, although that probably is that's probably suitable for smaller businesses. But anything you can do to help systemize your business, hire a coach, hire me, thank you. But there are a lot of different operating systems out there, and scaling up, Metronomics, EOS, those are examples. And I would recommend just reading the books that are out there, because if you read the book, you probably will go, this makes sense to me. This is what I'd like to, this process, reading this book makes exactly what I think I could implement in my business, and then choose from either the book you've read or the options that you have to determine which is the best operating system. And then I would say even more is just as important is finding a coach that you feel you can work with, somebody who's going to hold you accountable and that's going to ask you the right questions to move you forward, because that's really what a coach is about, asking the right questions and keeping your feet to the fire and making you accountable to achieving the results that you set out to.
Wonderful. Well, the last question that comes to my mind is, let's say we as the business owner have decided to move forward with this, and we've written our operating system, and now we're going to implement it. What sort of challenges are we going to run into with, let's say, our employees, our business partners, with ourselves? What sort of challenges do we need to be prepared to overcome as we move forward?
I think any business, just like Marty just shared, there's going to be people that are skeptical. And you're going to need to just ask them to devote 90 days to the system to follow it. There are a lot of software programs out there. When Marty and I were working together, we didn't have the software programs that we do now. Metronomics is a very good software system that it follows the process of, they include the job summary scorecards, the meeting rhythms, so that people can go in their weekly meeting and type the information in for the meeting. It streamlines the whole process. It also then keeps track of the revenue, the priorities that they have, and you in fact, you go in there every day if you want, and you probably should be updating what you're doing in terms of the metrics for your business, and it makes it really simple. And in no time at all, that becomes kind of the Bible for people to watch, for attending meetings, to keeping track of their metrics and achieving their objectives and priorities for each quarter. And that system, because it's a software system, just makes this whole process a lot easier and simple to follow. So I'm not sure what Align has. I know I shouldn't say EOS has, but Scaling Up has another software system that they recommend, which is called Align, and that works very well too. They've upgraded that, and it's very good as well to help keep the people in the business. And I would, aligned and consistent. I'd start with the leadership team and then cascade the system down to everybody else. Because if the leaders don't know what they're doing and how to follow it, it's going to be hard to get everybody else to follow it.
Great advice. Now, if someone did want to reach out to you, Doug, and ask for your help, what's the best way for them to contact you? Yeah,
my email address might be the best way. I can give you my phone number as well. That might be a little more difficult but dwick@positioningsystems.com and 319-393-2565. Again, 319-393-2565 is my phone number. Feel free to call me. You'll either get my voicemail and I'll call you right back. So, but email might be this easiest and fastest way.
I think your radio and broadcast experience came in there with that number again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Before we go, I always like to ask my guests if there's a question that I have not asked you, but that I should have, or if there's a thought that's come to mind that you want to share before we go.
Maybe it's because of a couple of clients didn't do this, that I recommended they do it. I would say one of the very first things you should do is write out a vision. I can't think of, I think his name is Cameron Herold. He has a book called Double Vision, I think it is. And he talks about being very specific about writing out your vision. Where are you going and why? Why are you doing this? I think a lot of times we forget about the why that we're doing it. And when you combine that vision of this is where we're going, so not only does the owner know, but your employees know, you simplify by telling them the vision how to act. And the why does that as well. And when we don't have those two working together, that's where I think a lot of issues come in. If you know why you're there, what your intention is in terms of what the business is supposed to produce and why it's producing that, you solve so many problems, so many issues. And not only that, I don't believe in motivation, I believe in inspiration, and the why provides the inspiration. So why are you in business? Communicate that. And I believe you'll build a successful business.
So, Doug, it looks like Cameron Herold has two books that you might have been referencing. One is called Vivid Vision, and the other one is called Double Double. And you said Double Vision, so maybe you were combining the two books.
Yeah. So they're both good, but the one I liked was Double Double, which is really about how to double your business. And he gives some very concrete. It's almost an operating system in itself. There, yes.
Yeah, the subtitle is How to Double Your Revenue and Profit in 3 Years or Less. So, interesting. Wow. I haven't read that one before. It's going on my reading list.
Yeah, cool. I think it's very similar to Metronomics, Shannon Susko's 3-Hag Way, which is in essence the same thing, although they get very good results. But the whole idea is to map out, here's what we're going to do year 1, here's what we're going to do 2 and year 3, and have a very, very vivid vision on what that is going to be. Yeah. What that looks like.
Well, Marty Fahncke and Doug Wick, thank you so much for joining me on Radio Free Enterprise today.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Frank.
Thanks again to Marty and Doug, and thank you for joining us. Until next time, I'm Frank Felker saying I'll see you on the radio.
You can't seem to turn a profit? Is that what's eating you, Sparky? Well, you've come to the right place. Radio Free Enterprise.